All right, so you know how people always say beer is good for you?
Right, like it's practically a health food or something?
Well, we're going to find out if that's actually true.
Okay.
We're diving into some research
Oh, cool.
from this document, 10cerveza.pdf.
Interesting.
We're going to look at what it says about beer's nutrition,
Uh-huh.
like what's actually in it. We'll also look at the potential benefits.
Right, the good stuff.
Exactly. The good stuff, but also the risks.
Gotta be realistic too, right?
Absolutely. And then we'll even look at that whole alcohol-free beer trend that's going on.
Yeah, that's getting pretty big.
So where should we even begin with all of this?
Well, the document kind of starts off by talking about how much beer people actually drink around the world.
Okay, that makes sense.
And get this, in some countries, people drink an average of 56 liters of beer every year.
56 liters. Wow, that is a lot of beer.
It is, right. And even though consumption's going down, it's still a pretty big part of so many cultures, like we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows you how popular it is.
It really does.
So if so many people are drinking it, we definitely need to know what it's actually doing to us.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the basics then. What's actually in beer, nutritionally?
Okay, so beer does have some stuff that our bodies need.
Like what?
Well, there's carbs for quick energy,
All right, that's not surprising.
and you'll find a bit of protein too.
Oh, okay, so not exactly a protein shake.
Not quite, no, but
Who
hey,
else? What else is in there?
this is where it gets a bit more interesting. Beer actually contains B vitamins.
Huh. Yeah.
Yep, like B2, B3, B6, even folic acid, which is important for like energy and cell health and stuff.
Never thought about that.
And those vitamins, they come from the barley and yeast in the brewing process.
So the ingredients actually make it kind of healthy.
To some extent, yeah.
What about minerals, though?
Oh, yeah, there's some of those too. You've got potassium, magnesium, and phosphorus.
Oh, okay.
But get this, and this is kind of a fun fact.
Okay, well, fun fact.
Beer also has silicon in it.
Silicon. Like what's in computer chips?
Exactly, but some studies have shown that silicon might be linked to bone health.
Seriously. So it's not just giving us beer bellies.
Maybe not. More research is needed, for sure.
That would be pretty ironic, though, if beer actually helped our bones.
I know, right?
Okay, so beer has some good stuff in it.
Yeah, it's not just empty calories like some people might think.
But there's got to be a catch, right?
Well, remember, we are talking about beer,
Yeah.
which means alcohol.
Oh, right. I was getting carried away there for a second.
And even if you're only drinking a little bit, alcohol still has some risks.
Yeah, like what?
It can damage your organs and, potentially lead to dependency over time.
So we've got those antioxidants and B vitamins and all that.
Uh-huh.
But then you've also got the alcohol in the mix.
Right. And that's kind of the big problem here.
Yeah, it kind of negates all the good stuff, doesn't it?
To a certain extent, yeah. In fact, the document actually uses the word toxic to describe alcohol's effects on the body.
Wow. Toxic. That's pretty serious.
It is, and it shows how even though beer has some nutritional value, the alcohol makes the overall impact on your health less beneficial than people might think.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was kind of hoping for a more clear-cut, beer is good for you answer.
I know, wouldn't that be nice?
It would, but it looks like it's not that simple.
It rarely is when it comes to this kind of stuff.
True, true. Okay, well, before we go too far down that road.
The alcohol road.
Yeah. What about alcohol-free beer? Is that a way to get the good stuff without the bad stuff?
That's a great question, and it's definitely a trend that's been growing like crazy lately.
Oh, I noticed that.
Especially in places where people have traditionally drunk a lot of beer, like we talked about earlier.
Uh-huh.
And the cool thing is that alcohol-free beer does seem to have a lot of the same nutrients and antioxidants as regular beer.
Oh, really?
Yep. So you're getting all the good stuff, but without the alcohol.
That almost sounds too good to be true. Is there like a downside?
Maybe a small one?
Okay, what is it?
So the way they remove the alcohol from the beer can potentially lower the amount of some of those beneficial compounds, like the hop polyphenols.
Hot polyphenols. What are those?
Basically, they're antioxidants found in hops.
Oh, right.
The things that make beer taste bitter.
Gotcha. So maybe the alcohol-free beer doesn't have as many of those antioxidants.
It might have a little less, yeah, but it's still way healthier than regular beer, even with that small reduction.
Okay, so it's still a good option.
For your liver, your heart, even your brain.
Wow. Okay. So we've talked about the nutrition. We've talked about the alcohol-free option.
Right.
But I know that this document goes even further, right?
All
It
right.
talks about the idea of like a safe amount of alcohol to drink.
Right, and it pretty much says straight up that there is no amount of alcohol that's considered safe for your health.
Wait, seriously? What about that whole a glass of red wine a day is good for you thing?
Ah, yeah, that's a common misconception, unfortunately.
Okay.
And recent research has basically shown that even moderate drinking, like that one glass of wine, doesn't actually have any heart-healthy benefits.
Huh. So, like, how much alcohol should we actually be drinking then?
Well, the document talks about how global health organizations are classifying alcohol as, well, a toxic substance.
They're calling it toxic.
Yeah, but not just toxic, they're also calling it psychoactive and dependency forming.
Wow, that good.
And it highlights the fact that alcohol contributes to a really large number of deaths around the world.
That's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, no safe amount. And classified as toxic, it's a lot to process, right?
It is. And it kind of makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about beer and alcohol in general.
I think that's the point of all this.
Yeah, okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
We've got the nutrition breakdown, we've got the alcohol factor.
And we've got the rise of these alcohol-free options.
Right, but it seems like there's still so much more to uncover here, especially when it comes to alcohol's impact on our health.
Yeah, we've only just scratched the surface, really.
Right, right. And you mentioned this whole psychoactive substance thing earlier.
I did.
That sounds pretty intense, so let's maybe dig into that next.
Absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there.
What does that even mean, and why is it so important for us to understand?
So, a psychoactive substance is basically anything that affects your mental state.
Okay.
It can change your mood, like how you're feeling,
Uh-huh.
your perception, like how you see things,
Right.
and even your behavior, like how you act.
Hmm. So alcohol isn't just affecting our physical health then, it's messing with our minds too.
It is something to consider for sure. And that's why the document really stresses the importance of understanding these effects, because it can really affect your judgment, like make you more impulsive and stuff. And over time, it can even lead to changes in your personality.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen how people can act differently after a few drinks. Sometimes it's funny, but sometimes it's not so great.
Exactly. And those changes in behavior can have serious consequences, not just for the person drinking, but for the people around them too.
Right, it's like a chain reaction.
It really is. And it all comes back to how everything's connected. Our physical health, our mental well-being, our social interactions, it's all influenced by the choices we make, and that includes our choices about alcohol.
Okay, so we know that alcohol, even in moderation, isn't really doing us any favors.
Right.
But for those of us who actually enjoy the taste of beer, like, what are we supposed to do?
You don't have to give it up entirely.
Okay, because I was going to say, am I doomed to a life of like LaCroix and kombucha?
Not at all. Remember those alcohol-free beers we were talking about earlier?
Oh, yeah.
The stuff they're doing with those is pretty amazing these days. You can find so many different kinds now. There's pretty much a style and flavor for everyone.
I've tried a few recently, and I was actually surprised at how good they were.
Right. You'd hardly know the difference.
Seriously, some of them are that good.
And that's the best part. You still get to enjoy having a beer. Like the whole ritual of it, the social aspect, the taste, but you're not getting the negative effects of the alcohol.
It's like having your beer and drinking it too.
Exactly. You're not missing out. You're just choosing a healthier way to enjoy it.
I like that. A lot healthier way to enjoy it. So it's not about cutting out beer completely.
Right.
It's about knowing what you're drinking and making conscious decisions about, when you're going to have a drink and how much you're going to have.
Exactly. Moderation and awareness, those are the key things here.
Hmm.
We need to be mindful of what we're putting into our bodies and make choices that, actually align with what we want for our health.
Okay, so if we do choose to drink alcohol, we need to make sure we're staying within those recommended guidelines.
Yes. Even though, as we talked about, there isn't technically a safe amount.
Right. And maybe explain some of those alcohol-free options.
Absolutely.
You might be surprised at how much you like them.
I think a lot of people are.
There are so many good craft breweries out there making amazing alcohol-free beers. It's pretty cool, actually.
It's like a whole new world has opened up.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something that really stood out to me from this document.
Oh, yeah.
It mentioned that alcohol is a psychoactive substance.
Right.
Can you explain what that means, like in simple terms, and why it's important in this context?
Sure. So basically, a psychoactive substance is anything that affects your mental state.
Okay, so it messes with your brain.
Pretty much, it can change your mood, like how you're feeling. It can change how you perceive things, and it can even change how you behave.
So alcohol isn't just affecting our bodies, then it's affecting our minds too.
Exactly. And we don't always realize it either.
And that's why it's so important to be aware of these effects, right?
Exactly. Alcohol can impair your judgment, make you more impulsive, and over time, it can even lead to changes in your personality.
And that can have some pretty serious consequences.
For sure, not only for yourself, but also for the people around you, like we talked about earlier.
Right, it's all connected.
It is our physical health, our mental health, and our social interactions. They're all intertwined, and alcohol can have a big impact on every single one of those areas.
This has been so eye-opening. I'm amazed by how much we've learned from just these few excerpts from this document.
It's pretty amazing how much information is packed in there, right?
It really makes you think.
It does. Sometimes the most insightful stuff comes from the most unexpected places, and in this case, it's really making us rethink our whole perspective on something that's so ingrained in our culture.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's about changing our perspective, making choices that are good for us, and putting our health and well-being first. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. You know what they say, knowledge is power.
That's the truth. And the more we know about the things we're putting into our bodies,
Uh,
the better choices we can make for ourselves.
I think that's a great place to leave it for now.
Okay, so we've talked about the good, the bad, and the alcohol-free.
You covered it all.
But let's be real. Beer is a big part of so many things,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
like our social lives, traditions, celebrations, even our economies. Like, what do we do with all this new information?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I don't think it's about demonizing beer or saying that no one should ever drink it again.
Right, because that's not realistic.
It's not. It's about finding that balance, you know?
Like a balance between enjoying it and being responsible.
Exactly. Enjoying beer in a way that doesn't mess up our health or, make us feel bad. It's about mindful consumption.
So like asking ourselves, why are we reaching for this beer?
Exactly. What are we hoping to get out of it?
And being honest with ourselves about the answers.
Right. Because if we're just looking to relax or connect with people, maybe there are other ways to do that besides drinking.
Or maybe we choose to have an alcohol-free beer instead.
Exactly. The point is to be intentional about it.
Intentional indulgence. I like that.
Me too.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about beer.
It really is.
But what about the cultural aspect of it? Beer is such a big part of our traditions and celebrations and stuff.
Yeah, that's where things get a little more complicated, I think.
It does, doesn't it?
We have to remember that beer has a really long history, and it's a huge part of so many cultures around the world.
Mm.
So it's not about pretending that history doesn't exist. It's about changing how we think about beer in relation to all of that.
So instead of just mindlessly following traditions,
Right.
we can make new traditions that are more aligned with what we believe in and what we now know about health.
Exactly. We can redefine what it means to celebrate, to be social, to unwind. Maybe it's a family barbecue with a bunch of different craft alcohol-free beers, or a night out with friends where we choose mocktails instead of cocktails. The possibilities are endless, really.
I love that it's, like you said, a whole new way of thinking about it.
I think so.
I'm starting to see beer in a totally new light.
Really?
Yeah, it's not just a drink, it's a choice.
That's a great way to put it.
A choice with consequences, good and bad.
And ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide what role we want beer to play in our lives.
Right.
But hopefully with all this new information, people can make those choices in a way that feels good and, makes sense for them.
Okay, so to wrap things up,
Uh-huh.
what would you say is like the most important takeaway from all of this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that knowledge is power. Like, the more we understand about the things we consume, the better choices we can make. And those choices can have a huge impact on our health.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying earlier, we can still enjoy beer and, not totally wreck our health
Mhm.
as long as we're mindful about it.
Exactly. And it's not just about making good choices for ourselves, though. I think we can actually create a culture where mindful drinking is just like the normal thing to do.
That would be amazing.
Right. Where we're all supporting each other to make healthy choices and we can still celebrate and have a good time without making it all about the alcohol.
I love that vision. A world where everyone can raise a glass, whether it's beer or an alcohol-free drink or something else entirely, and know that they're making a choice that's good for them. A choice that makes them happy and keeps them healthy.
Cheers to that. And, one more thing I want to add is that there's always more to learn.
Oh, for sure.
So I encourage everyone listening to keep digging into this topic. Don't be afraid to ask questions. The world of beer is huge and it's changing all the time.
It really is. Okay, so back to our original question then.
Mm.
Is beer good for you?
Well, based on everything we've talked about today, I don't think there's a simple answer.
Yeah, it's definitely not a yes or no thing.
Not at all. It's more like a balancing act, you know?
There's good stuff in there, but then you've got the alcohol to consider too.
Exactly like a seesaw with the benefits on one side and then the risks of the alcohol on the other.
And it seems like in a lot of cases, the risks are heavier than the benefits, especially with all the new research coming out about how alcohol affects our health.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment. But the good news is we don't have to completely give up beer.
Right.
We've got those alcohol-free beers, which are a great alternative if you want to enjoy the taste and the social side of things without putting your health at risk.
And honestly, some of those alcohol-free beers are so good, you might not even miss the alcohol.
I know, right? The craft brewers really stepping up their game.
They are. It's pretty impressive what they're doing.
It is.
Okay, well, as we wrap up this deep dive, what final thought would you leave our listeners with?
That's a good question. I'd say the most important thing to remember is that knowledge really is power.
I love that.
The more we understand about the choices we're making, the more control we have over our lives, and our well-being. So keep learning, keep asking those questions, and keep exploring the world of beer with, an open mind. Be curious.
Beautifully said, and I think it's safe to say that when it comes to your health and happiness, knowledge is your best brew.
I like that a lot.
Now, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration into, well, who knows?
Until next time.